What would you do if the whole world laughed when you told the truth? The gym was too loud to hear the sound of skin hitting floor, but everyone saw it. Noah lay on the mat, palms scraped, one knee twisted awkwardly under him, the barbell clattering beside his body like it was laughing too. It wasn't even heavy, just an aluminum training bar, but someone had coated it with oil, just enough to guarantee a slip, just enough to make the fall look real. Above him, the ceiling lights flickered in rhythm with the hoots of 100 students. A chant started 0 and 1 0 and 1 louder, meaner. Coach Braxton didn't stop them. He held the mic like a stand-up comic and stepped into the center of the court with the swagger of a man who thought cruelty was charisma. Well, he boomed, pacing in front of Noah like a lion that had just hunted a mouse. I guess even fantasy has gravity. Laughter erupted. Noah pushed himself up slowly. Not because he was hurt, but because he didn't want to give them the satisfaction of rushing. His palms left faint red streaks on the mat. His breathing was calm, but his eyes, the eyes of a boy who had nothing left to explain, were full of something far heavier than shame. Braxton bent down and picked up the bar like it weighed nothing, holding it overhead in mock triumph. This is what 183 wins look like. Folks, he said, light as air, slippery as truth. More laughter. Someone made sound effects, whoosh thud. Another pretended to faint like a cartoon character. Near the bleachers, a teacher looked away. A few students filmed on their phones. Noah didn't speak. He never did. He walked off the mat, fists tucked into his sleeves, the soles of his shoes squeaking just enough to remind everyone he was still there. He didn't look at anyone, especially not Mia. She had her arms crossed, her face blank. By the time he reached the locker room, someone had already drawn an outline on the tile with chalk, a stick figure, arms flailing mid-fall. A caption read, "Lifted by lies, crushed by physics." The bell rang. The hall began to buzz again. Noah stood by his locker, not moving. The stick figure watched him in silence. The janitor swept past, paused, then stepped around the drawing, not over it, like it was too ridiculous to matter, and somehow still too cruel to erase. Back in the gym, Braxton dropped the mic back into its cradle. "Next time," he muttered, smirking to himself. "Maybe he'll tell us his grandpa lifted the Eiffel Tower." Noah didn't hear that part. He was already halfway home, but the silence he left behind, it stayed, it settled, and it weighed more than any bar they could drop. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. By second period, the joke had evolved. It wasn't just whispers, now it had teeth. Noah's locker was plastered with homemade stickers, bench pressed by Fiction 183 and Oh So Wrong. Someone taped a caricature, a muscled caveman labeled Gramps, curling a barbell made of marshmallows. Inside his science notebook, someone had slipped a fake strongman certificate, gold glitter around the edges. Signature sincerely, Santa. He didn't touch any of it, didn't pull the stickers off, didn't react. He moved like furniture, something present but unnoticed until it became inconvenient. At lunch, it got meaner. Noah sat alone at the far end of a bench, his tray untouched. Steam rose from a plate of overcooked pasta. From the table across the aisle, someone whispered loudly, careful, he might lift the whole cafeteria. Laughter. Another student reached under the table and flung a protein bar at him. It bounced, landed neatly beside his hand. Fuel up. Legend. Noah looked at it, just for a second. Then, slowly, he picked up his fork, tried to slice the pasta. The prongs snapped. Cheap plastic. It cracked in his fingers like something symbolic. He didn't curse. He didn't move. Just sat there, holding the broken half like it weighed more than the barbell that morning. Mia was at a nearby table. She saw it. She didn't laugh, but she didn't speak either. Her hands stayed in her sleeves, her shoulders folded in like a page being turned too quickly. Coach Braxton passed by their row on his way to refill his coffee. He didn't look down at Noah, just grinned toward a cluster of kids rewatching the video on a phone. Kids these days, full of dreams, not much steel. One of the teachers chuckled. You think his grandpa's real? Braxton shrugged. Maybe, but legends don't need to borrow gym time to be remembered. They both laughed. The janitor was mopping near the vending machine. He didn't join in, just wiped, slow and steady, the mop gliding over nothing at all. At the back of the lunchroom, someone held up a new t-shirt design. On it, a cartoon Noah stick thin, arms trembling, tried to lift a dumbbell labeled reality. The bar snapped in half. By final bell, the phrase barbell bloodline had become a hashtag, chalked onto stairwells, printed on bathroom doors. No one said it to his face, but that wasn't mercy. That was design. It was easier to mock what wouldn't fight back. Noah walked home under a sky turning to slate. He didn't glance at the posters flapping on the fence strongman auditions proof preferred. He just kept walking, fists again tucked inside sleeves, broken fork still in his pocket. Some jokes get louder, others get sharper. This one got quiet, and the quiet was starting to cut. The spoon clinked twice against the cereal bowl, then went still. Noah stared at it like it was unfamiliar. The milk was warm. The flakes were soggy. He hadn't taken a bite. Across the table, Arnold Schwarzenegger wiped grease from his thumb with a faded towel. His shirt was plain gray, tucked. His forearms rested on the table like steel beams wrapped in skin. He didn't eat. He didn't sip his coffee. He just watched. Not intensely, not with pity, just watched. Noah exhaled, finally, not with relief, just surrender. They laughed. The words came out flat, no build-up, no tremor, just placed on the table like a fact that didn't need decoration. Arnold didn't respond. Not right away. He shifted slightly, the chair creaking under the weight of him. He picked up the cup, took one long sip, then set it down with a soft tap. Did you say it out loud? Noah nodded. Then it was a strong day. That confused him. His eyes flicked up for a second, searching his grandfather's face for a punchline that wasn't there. They made shirts, Noah said quietly. Taped things to my locker. Called you fake. He paused. They said maybe I lied to feel important. Arnold didn't blink. Did you? Noah hesitated only for a beat. Then, firmly, no. Arnold nodded once. That was all. Like the moment had passed some kind of test. The silence stretched again. The hallway creaked. A bird chirped twice outside and then flew off. The light on the kitchen counter blinked. Dishwasher cycle done. Somewhere upstairs, the old ceiling fan hummed. But inside the kitchen, time had chosen not to move. Noah pushed the cereal away. The spoon slid slightly, tilted, and rested in the milk like it had drowned. Why didn't you ever tell people? His voice cracked just a little. Arnold caught it, but didn't point it out. Because they weren't listening. He said, they were waiting to laugh or clap. That's not the same. Noah leaned forward, elbows on the table. He was small, but the question he carried was heavy. But I told the truth, and it made things worse. Arnold looked at him, finally directly. Truth doesn't guarantee applause, he said. It guarantees weight, and not everyone is strong enough to hold it. That stayed. It didn't float, it settled. Noah didn't speak again. Neither did Arnold. But in the quiet that followed, the room didn't feel empty. It felt dense, packed with the kind of things that men didn't say out loud until they knew someone could carry them. Noah stood first, slowly. He didn't clear the bowl. He didn't look back. Arnold stayed behind. He poured another coffee. Black, no sugar, no cream, no softness. He took a sip. He stared out the window. And outside, the wind started to change. The garage hadn't been opened in weeks, maybe months. The hinges groaned like they remembered something. Dust danced in slanted light, spinning in slow, aimless circles. Old gym mats leaned against the far wall, cracked with age. A jump rope hung from a nail, stiff and faded. Arnold moved through it like he was stepping into something sacred, each step deliberate. He didn't turn on the light, He didn't need to. He knew where everything was by memory, not sight. In the corner sat the steel trunk. It was long, rust-bolted, dented at the edge where one move in 1974 had gone wrong. He knelt without sound, knees pressing into the cold cement. His fingers found the latches. They stuck for a moment, then gave. The lid creaked open. The smell hit first sweat and leather, faint steel polish, something older than either. A scent you don't forget once you've bled in it. Inside, wrapped in a military towel, was the belt. Thick brown leather, the kind that didn't flex under pressure. The stitching had frayed. The holes were stretched from years of buckling past their limit. Across the back, barely visible, Welch Stärkste 1972, strongest in the world. Arnold ran his thumb along the inscription, not with pride, just acknowledgement. Beneath it, a crumpled photograph, black and white. He unfolded it with both hands. The photo showed a younger version of him bare-chested, thighs like stone, arms like rope, carrying a massive log across his shoulders in the Alps. The crowd behind him was a blur, but his eyes in the photo, sharp, focused, silent, cut through time. Next to it, a yellowed clipping from a German newspaper. The headline smudged but readable. Der Unaufhaltbare, Schwarzenegger siegt zum 183. Mal. The unstoppable, Schwarzenegger wins for the 183rd time. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just stared. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in faded canvas, was a pair of gloves. Not boxing gloves, lifting gloves. The kind that dug into the skin and left marks long after the set was done. The palms were torn, the straps reinforced with duct tape. He picked them up, flexed them once, then laid them back down, gently, like putting something to rest. He sat there for a long time. The wind outside rustled the hedges. A neighbor's dog barked and fell silent. Somewhere across the street, a sprinkler started its slow, rhythmic whisper. Inside the garage, Arnold didn't move. The belt stayed in the trunk. The photograph folded again. The gloves untouched. He didn't take them out. He didn't need to. They weren't for proof. They were for remembering. And in that dark room, lit only by a crack of sun on rusted steel, Arnold remembered exactly who he was and exactly what his grandson was carrying. The announcement came over the intercom like a challenge disguised as celebration. Special event today in the gym. Lift for legacy. Let's see which family bloodlines are made of steel. Coach Braxton's voice was too cheerful to be innocent. He stood under the basketball hoop, arms crossed, wearing a smug grin that said this wasn't about fitness, it was about spectacle, about crushing what hadn't yet broken. A barbell sat at the center of the mat. It gleamed unnaturally. Some students thought it looked wet. It was a thin coat of cooking oil, carefully applied, nearly invisible under gym lights. Noah didn't know that yet. He stood at the edge of the court, hands at his sides, expression blank. The crowd gathered in rows. Phones were already out. Braxton called him forward. Noah, since your grandfather was apparently the king of muscle, let's see if the crown fits. Laughter rippled. Someone from the bleachers shouted, "Don't slip this time." Champ, more laughter. Noah walked forward without looking up. Each step was soft, but not uncertain. He reached the bar, crouched low, and gripped it. It spun slightly in his hands. He paused. Braxton's voice sliced the silence. Too light or too real? Noah tightened his grip. Pulled. The bar rolled. His right hand slid first, followed by the left. His sneakers lost friction. His body twisted, knees buckled. He collapsed, not just a fall, but a controlled demolition. The gym roared. Students stood. Phones flashed. One kid jumped onto a bench and screamed, "Another win for the barbell." Braxton chuckled into the mic. Guess 183 wins didn't include physics class. Noah didn't move. Not for a moment. Not to defend. Not to explain. He sat up slowly, wiped his palms on his pants, and stood. No limping, No expression. He just walked back to the edge of the court. On the locker room wall later, someone chalked a scoreboard, fictional wins, 183 real reps, 0 next to it. A cartoon Noah crushed under a weight labeled reality. His face crossed out with red X's. No one erased it. No one spoke. Mia walked by that wall. She looked for a second too long but didn't stop. Coach Braxton stood in the hallway, laughing with 2 other teachers. He nearly nailed it this time. He said, "Just missed the part where you actually lift." One teacher nodded. "Theatrics are heavier than steel, I guess." The janitor passed them. No eye contact. Just the mop sliding across clean tile. That night, the school's Instagram account posted a blurry shot of the fall. Caption, "Legacy Attempt 2. Gravity wins again." Noah saw it. He didn't react. He turned off his phone. Outside, the wind knocked over a garbage can. Inside his room, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt heavy, and it was starting to shape him. He didn't eat dinner. The plate sat untouched, vegetables drying at the edges, steam long gone. Noah just sat there, arms limp at his sides, back straight like he was bracing for an impact that already happened. Arnold stood by the counter, cleaning a cast iron pan with slow, circular motions. The scrape of metal on metal was the only sound in the room. "They posted it," Noah finally said. Arnold didn't look up. The video of me falling again. The comments. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the sharp edge of injustice. "They said I was trying to fake legacy. That I made you up." Arnold turned off the stove. He walked to the pantry, opened it, reached behind an old container of nails, pulled out a worn black duffel bag. Its zipper was bent, its surface smudged with time. He placed it gently on the table between them, unzipped it. Slowly, Noah watched. First came the envelope, yellowed, edges curled, inside a certificate, creased but intact. Austrian National Strongman Champion. Date 1972. Name Arnold Schwarzenegger. Noah blinked once. Then came the photo Arnold in mid-lift, a massive boulder across his shoulders, legs trembling but unbroken. The veins in his arms looked like they were etched by pressure itself. Another image, a clipping from an old Austrian newspaper. The headline read, "183 wins. The man who made iron bend." Arnold didn't explain. He just kept unpacking. Finally, we're at the bottom. Wrapped in faded cloth that once was a gym towel, was the belt, thick, worn, real. The name was stamped into the leather, not printed. Stamped, scarred in. Noah reached out, slowly, like it might vanish. His fingers brushed the metal buckle, cold, heavy, certain. "This is real," he whispered. Arnold didn't smile. "You think I typed all this in the school library?" Noah almost laughed. "Almost. Why didn't you ever show it to anyone?" he asked. Arnold's gaze stayed on the belt. "Because real strength doesn't need to be proven, only lived." The boy nodded slowly. His thumb traced the frayed edge of the strap. "Can I bring it to school?" Arnold shook his head. "You don't need to. But they don't believe me." Arnold leaned forward, voice low, like he was handing over something too valuable to shout. "Being doubted doesn't make you wrong. Being believed doesn't make you right. Truth doesn't win by applause. It wins by outlasting." The kitchen held still. The lights hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice, then stopped. Noah stared at the belt, not like a trophy, like a weight, like a thing he wasn't afraid to carry anymore. Not for them, but for himself. The gym was louder than usual, too loud for it to be natural. Coach Braxton stood center court like a ringmaster, clipboard in one hand, wireless mic in the other. His smile was bright, performative, the kind people wore when they were waiting to humiliate someone publicly and get away with it. "Welcome back to day 4 of Athletic Week," he called out, pacing. "Today, we've got a few parents visiting some demos, some fun. But before all that, maybe we'll get another moment from our in-house champion in the making. A few chuckles stirred the bleachers. Noah sat near the back, hood up, hands folded. He didn't look up. He didn't have to. He felt every eye already crawling over him. "What do you think?" Noah Braxton continued, voice rising. "You bringing the belt today, or just more bedtime stories?" The students laughed, some out of cruelty, others out of fear of being next. Then the intercom buzzed. A low crackle. The secretary's voice came through, dry and factual. "Visitor at the front desk for Noah. Name listed as Arnold Schwarzenegger." Silence. Real silence. Not the kind that waited for a punchline, but the kind that waited because something important had just shifted. Coach Braxton's grin froze. The mic lowered half an inch. All heads turned toward the double doors. They opened, and he stepped in. No swagger, no words. Just boots on polished wood, a worn denim jacket, a black case in one hand, posture straight, eyes level. Arnold walked past the rows of students like they weren't obstacles, but irrelevant. Each step slowed the room down, as if time itself had paused to let him move through it. Noah stood, slowly. His chair made the faintest scrape, but even that felt loud. Arnold reached center court, set the black case down, unlatched it, inside a wooden plaque. The brass was dull but clean. The engraving caught the light just enough. Arnold Schwarzenegger, 183, strongman wins. 7X, Mr. Olympia 1 final loss. Countless returns. He turned it toward the crowd. He didn't explain it. He didn't gesture. He simply stood behind it like a man who knew what couldn't be denied, didn't need to be defended. Then his voice came. Low. Clear. Unforced. Someone here said legacy sounded made up, like truth needs permission to exist. He looked at Braxton. The coach said nothing. "You teach them how to run faster," Arnold said. "Teach them how to stand still when it matters." Then he turned to Noah. No gesture, no smile, just a single nod. And in that instant, the whole gym shifted, not because of what was said, but because of what couldn't be laughed at anymore. Noah stepped forward, each footstep quieter than the last, until he reached the plaque. He touched it just once with both hands. The silence stayed, and it felt earned. The office lights were too bright for how quiet it had become. Coach Braxton sat behind his desk, elbows on his knees, fingers locked together like he was praying to a god he didn't believe in. The blinds were half closed. The air smelled like burnt coffee and stale gym socks. His whistle sat on the desk, coiled like a snake no longer needed. 3 soft knocks. He didn't answer. The door opened anyway. Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped inside. No jacket now, just a dark button-down. Sleeves rolled, forearms marked with pale scars from another lifetime. He didn't ask to come in. He didn't sit. He stood, still, heavy as a truth no one wanted to hear. Braxton rose halfway, stammering. "Look, I didn't mean anything by it. The kid, it just seemed made up." I thought Arnold didn't blink. "You didn't think he was lying." He said, "You thought it might be true, and that scared you more." The room tightened. Braxton glanced away, then back. His voice dropped. "It was a joke. They were laughing. Because you told them it was safe to." Arnold's words didn't rise. They dropped like iron hitting concrete. "You laughed first. That's all the permission they needed." Braxton leaned on the desk like it could help him stand straighter. He didn't even defend himself. Arnold nodded once. "Because silence is what you leave when your voice won't be enough. And you turned that silence into a room and filled it with your voice." The clock ticked. Once, twice. Outside, the gym echoed faintly. Distant bouncing basketballs. Unaware. Arnold walked toward the wall, looked at a photo Braxton with last year's dodgeball champions. Everyone smiling. The frame was crooked. He adjusted it, just slightly, then turned back. You don't need to know who someone was to treat them like who they are. He said, you mocked a legacy you never earned. And you laughed at a boy who didn't owe you proof. Braxton didn't argue. Not now. Arnold headed for the door, paused. You like being the loudest man in the room? He looked back once. That usually means you're the one listening the least. Then he left. No door slam, no final glare, just the click of the latch, firm and clean. Braxton stood there alone. The whistle didn't move. Neither did he. But something else had, and it wasn't coming back. It wasn't announced. No assembly, no ribbon, no speech. Just a small glass case mounted in the main hallway between the gym doors and the trophy cabinet. No spotlight, no bold plaque, just a belt, faded leather, cracked at the buckle. The words stamped along the edge. Weltstarkste 1972 had softened, like they'd been held too long, sweated into, bled into. Between the folds of the belt lay a pair of fingerless lifting gloves worn, duct-taped at the wrists, palms torn open from years of friction. Above them, nailed into the wood backing, was a single bar of steel, bent, warped, scored with fingerprints that would never be dusted, and beneath it all a brass plate, small, almost easy to miss. You don't lift for applause. You lift so no one can take the truth from you. Noah found it by accident. He was returning cones to the storage closet, walking the same path he had every day, eyes down, steps quiet, but something in the way the hallway light hit the glass made him look up. He stopped mid-step. He didn't move. He didn't reach out, didn't smile, didn't cry. He just stood there. A few students passed behind him. No one laughed. No one said a word. One boy slowed for a moment, read the plaque silently, then walked on without breaking stride. From behind, the gym doors creaked open. Footsteps approached. Coach Braxton. He paused a few feet away. For once, no clipboard, no whistle. Just him, hands in his pockets, eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He looked at the display, then at Noah, then back at the belt. We put it up Friday, he said, voice quieter than it had ever been. After school? Noah didn't answer. Braxton shifted his weight, felt like the kind of story that didn't need more words. Still, Noah said nothing. He kept his eyes on the gloves on the fraying thread that wrapped the strap, on the weight that didn't need metal plates to feel real. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. His sneakers squeaked once on the tile, then fell silent as he disappeared down the corridor. Behind him, the belt remained. No fanfare, no crowd, just a memory, displayed not for glory, but as proof that something had been carried. And still was. It didn't shine. It didn't shout. It didn't demand attention. But it didn't move either. And sometimes that's how truth survives. Not by being seen, but by refusing to disappear. Tuesday morning arrived like it always did, bell tones. Lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking on polished tile. But something felt different. Not louder, quieter, not like fear. Like space. Noah walked the hallway without his hood up, not defiantly, not dramatically, just without hiding. He passed the usual walls, the same stairwell, the same trophy case, and then, like muscle memory, he turned past the glass display where the belt now hung. He didn't stop. He didn't need to, but someone else had. A second-grade girl stood in front of the case, backpack slipping from one shoulder, her finger pointing through the glass at the gloves. Her friend leaned in. What's that? She answered without hesitation. That's his grandpa. He's real. Noah heard it, didn't flinch, didn't turn, just kept walking. In the classroom, no one whispered. Not because they'd forgotten, because the punchline had dissolved. Slowly, like ice in warm water. Even those who had laughed the hardest didn't know when they had stopped. They just had, at lunch, no new sketches, no milk cartons shoved across the table. The betting sheet once kept in Jaden's pencil case had vanished. No one asked why. Mia sat across from him. Not close, not far. She didn't speak. Neither did he. But when she opened her notebook, there was a line drawn across the center of the page. A thick, careful line. Under it, in small letters, some weights don't get lighter. You just stop being afraid to carry them. Noah looked at it for a moment, then gave the faintest nod, barely visible. After school, he walked home like he always did, but his steps were different, not faster, not slower, just real. When he opened the front door, Arnold was in the garage, wiping down an old bench press bar with a cloth that looked as old as the memories it carried. No words passed between them. Inside Noah's room, the belt lay on his desk, not in a case, not mounted, just resting. Next to it, his sketchbook. On the open page, a hallway. On one wall, the glass case with the gloves and belt. On the other, a single figure walking past, not with head bowed, not with fists raised, just walking. In the sketch, the figure had no face, no name. It didn't need one. It was about the movement, about what it meant to keep going, to not stop, to not explain. The next morning, he walked that hallway again, didn't pause, didn't look, but the belt was still there, and it didn't need to speak, because it already had, and the right people had heard it. Some truths don't echo, they just land, and some names don't need to be remembered to matter, because they were carried, and that, was enough. If you enjoyed this story, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.